This is the Healthology Experts, where we talk about the art and science of health and longevity. I'm Dr. Traveler, and thank you for joining us. All right, you guys, welcome back to Healthology Experts. I'm excited today. I've got a great guest that I've been antsy to talk with, because whenever we talk, such great conversations. We've got Dr. Brady Benham, and so he's just got some awesome perspectives. I'm just gonna kind of jump right in and we'll get to know him a little bit. So Doc, first let's start with like you and maybe personal family. Tell me a little bit about you. How would you describe you?
Well, I'm 65 years old. That's one way to start out.
So a young guy, just young.
Yes, and I'm a physician here in town. I do obstetrics and gynecology. I've been here in St. George since 2005. I was in the Air Force prior to that.
Cool.
Served 6 years. I continued to do the reserves down at Nellis Air Force Base. So I stayed in until I could retire. Prior to that was my residency in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Prior to that, medical school and a year of internal medicine residency at Kansas University.
I see he's got the Jayhawks band on.
I got the Jayhawks band on. They went out in the second round this year.
I know. It's been rough on.
You don't want to be number
good
one seed.
No number one seeds.
Or number two this year.
Yes, exactly.
And prior to that, it was interesting because that was a career change for me. Because
Really?
I did not start out with the intent on doing medicine in my life.
Really? I didn't know that.
No. When I served a mission to Guatemala in 1977 for the most part. In 1978, came home, worked a little bit part-time, going to school part-time, and decided I wanted to, thought I would go into the business area. And so I went to BYU, graduated with a degree in business management. And then I did a graduate degree in international management.
Wow.
Yeah, so I went, it was called Thunderbird, American School of International Management at the time. Got my first job. It was a hard time because we were coming out of a major recession of the early 1980s.
Yeah.
And so I went to work for an oil company. I went for work to Amoco. It's now part of British Petroleum. And I thought I would be going overseas, but instead they sent me to Liberal, Kansas. Now, Liberal, Kansas is in the far southwest corner of Kansas. It's a couple of miles from the Okie Panhandle, which is only 30 miles across.
Yeah.
So the largest city to us would be Amarillo.
Oh, wow.
Except for a slightly smaller city than that, which was to the north of us, which was Garden City, Kansas. And I joke about it because it was so flat. The jokes that they would have out there would be, it's so flat you can see tomorrow coming. If you look east, you can see tomorrow coming. You stand on a tuna fish can, you can see the back of your head.
There you go. So it's flat.
It's flat and it's treeless.
Well, that's great. I didn't realize that this was the second career then.
Yes, it is.
So how did that choice then come?
Well, it was interesting. My last year of undergraduate work, when I was already accepted to go to graduate school, I saw a program on medicine and what it could do, and it intrigued me and it was interesting to me. And then I ran into some people that were doing pre-med, and I always thought, no, I don't know if that's me, but this interest got in me and it just never left. And finally, after a year working for Amoco Production in far southwest Kansas, the wind blows there. It's not blowing though until the flagpole is bent.
Yeah.
So I decided, well, there's no real good future for a business major in engineering firm. And oil and gas is engineering. Getting it out of the ground is all about engineering. So I decided to leave that, and I went back to Phoenix area. My wife and I had been living in Mesa prior when I was going to graduate school. And then I went back there and I got a job working for an accounting firm. And I thought, okay, I'll get some accounting background. I was doing taxes, and then I'll kind of move on to the business area. And that desire to go into medicine never left me. And after about a year or so, I said, I either gotta do this, or I'm gonna wonder if the rest of my life. And I don't like wonder ifs.
Yeah.
I've had those.
Yeah.
And I don't want to ever look back and say, I wish I'd tried. Now, it was risky proposition to do that, because if you leave a career and leave a track, it's very hard to come back to that if things don't work out. Because when you're talking about coming back and somebody hiring you, they're going to look, I don't think this individual's really interested in what we do.
Yeah.
We're looking for somebody else more long-term who's really got a desire to do this. So I knew it was kind of risky. But things just pulled together. They worked out. I had to go back to school. I had to get the pre-med requirements done.
Yeah.
I was
So
working.
it was like a whole shift.
Yeah. When we decided to do that, we had 2 children. We had 2 little boys born in Arizona, and we moved to. We were living in Orem, Utah, and it was a small little apartment. And my wife was teaching school. She had been teaching school down in Mesa, Arizona, so she got a job there in Provo. And after a couple of years and keep slugging away at trying to get a better score on the medical entrance exam, I applied and I got accepted to Kansas University.
Got into Kansas.
So I did. So I entered at medical school at age 32. While we were in Orem, we had 2 little girls, so we had 4 children at the time.
Wow.
And I remember thinking, that's so perfect. 2 boys, 2 girls. And I brought that up to my wife and I go, it's just so perfect. 2 boys, 2 girls. I just feel like we're so complete. And she goes, I don't think we are.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking after that, how many children does she plan to have?
So how many kids do you have?
I have 8.
8. See, I'm learning all this. I'm just like, I haven't been asking the right question. So 8 kids.
I had 8 kids.
Medicine wasn't your first career.
No, it wasn't.
Man.
So I entered medical school with 4 children.
Okay.
We added 2 little boys while we were there.
While you were there.
So we had, at that point, 4 little boys, 2 little girls, and got into residency. Well, I first did a year of internal medicine there in Kansas City, and then I went off to Allentown, Pennsylvania for obstetrics and gynecology 4 years, and we added 2 little girls there.
2 girls there.
So we have the 2 Arizona boys, the 2 Utah girls, the 2 Kansas boys, and the 2 Pennsylvania girls.
So at least they come in doubles.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
And at that point, I always asked my wife year after that, are we done?
Yeah.
And I think we got exhausted. We were done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. 8. Wow.
And then after residency, went into the Air Force, was at Scott Air Force Base in Illinois. It's just about 14 miles east of the Mississippi River from St. Louis.
I did my schooling in St. Louis. So
Yeah.
I know right where
So there's a couple of O'Fallons, one on Missouri side, one on
I
and
do.
we lived on the O'Fallon on
you were
the
the Illinois Elf.
on the Illinois side.
There we go.
Yes,
Wow.
and we loved it there. We absolutely loved it there, and met lots of great people. It was a wonderful place to live.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm learning all sorts of great. I want to just keep talking about him, but that's great. Awesome. So you can see he's just such an interesting guy. Okay. Okay. So let's kind of shift a little bit now that we know a little bit about you, because I can only imagine the more we talk, it's like a new can of worms opens up. So. Dr. Benham, I know he has been a runner. That's been a connection for he and I. He's done a lot of running and run into some injuries.
A lot
of injuries. As far as just your perspective on health and I guess he talks about I just forgot it again.
PTA.
PTA.
Yes.
Okay. I want to talk about what PTA or triple PTA as he's called it now. Let's talk a little bit about PTA and how that plays into health in general.
Sure. So when I was in high school and I was thinking about going and playing football at Camelback High in Phoenix, Arizona, a friend of mine said, "Yeah, we can." I'm a skinny guy, tall, skinny guy.
Okay.
And says, "Oh, we can put some. We can build you up. I've got a program." I said, "Really?" He said, yeah. I said, "What is this program?" And he says, "It's called PTA." I go, "What does that stand for?" He says, "Pain, Torture, and Agony." And so I've never forgotten that, pain, torture, and agony. And a lot of people are willing to go through pain, torture, and agony, but there was something missing because I would go through it a lot and never quite meet my goals of what I wanted to do. I honestly wanted to qualify to run the Boston Marathon.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I started out as a runner. I wasn't a runner in high school. I used to see the cross-country team out there and thought to myself, man,
they're not chasing anything.
They're not chasing anything. They're just running through the desert, and they're going and going, and they're just a bunch of skinny guys, you know.
Seems crazy. Yeah.
And I'm just like, why would you want to do that? But after a while, not so much in medical school as when you get into the Air Force, you have to keep yourself physically fit, and I'd have to go off, and at certain times I'd have to go and spend time in between my medical school years and spend some time with the Air Force doing one thing or another, different training things that they have, and part of what you would have to do when you're there is physical fitness.
Yeah.
And running was just kind of more of a natural thing for me, being thin. It's easier to run.
You're built like a runner.
Yes, and so I thought, well, I like doing it, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It was interesting that you can actually sit there and enjoy something like that. And then residency took over, and it was just, oh my goodness, there was 1 week, this was before they had a limitation on hours. I was actually in the hospital semi-awake for 142 hours in the week. I think there's like 172 hours in a whole week.
Well, it's crazy. Crazy, number one, that you could do it, and number two, that like you're trying to function as a physician, like sleep deprived, and
you're
that's
sleep
a little
deprived,
scary.
But that first year, which is where that happened, was really all about just exposure, getting exposed, multiple layers of oversight.
So you didn't have to be the principal decision maker. You were just there.
You were there to learn and to try to make decisions and then present those to somebody over you. You might have to present it to somebody over them. So there were layers of protection for the patient.
Good. Maybe that's part of it then, to like stress, to put you under stressful situations and see if you can still have a functioning mind.
Yeah, to get all of that experience, you need that and when you come out, because I have seen things and crazy things that I never saw in residency.
Yeah.
But able to draw upon your knowledge from other experiences, you roll it all together and then you plan something out and you go for it. And it's good to have partners too, and I've got great partners, and they all bring their own viewpoint and their own perspective to everything, and that makes it safer as well. So we can take on challenging things because we work together, and we pull our brains together on something when we work. So when we do surgeries, we always operate together. Well, as it was, I went out one night. My son goes, "Hey, Dad, let's go play ball in the driveway."
Yeah.
And I liked playing basketball at the time. And in fact, this was the first place where I learned one time when I was playing basketball that the Achilles tendon could get real sore real fast when you're in your mid-30s.
Sure.
But we went out and we played in the driveway, and we just played the 10.
Okay.
And I was not in good condition. I didn't know what the issue was, but I came in red-faced, huffing and puffing, had to work my tail off to beat a 14-year-old kid in the driveway.
But you won.
I won, but I beat up on him by just using my weight.
There you go.
Because I was heavier than I am now.
More mass.
I had more mass, and so I just backed into him, pushed my way underneath to where I couldn't miss.
It doesn't matter. You won. That's all.
I did win, but I came in. I was red-faced, huffing and puffing, and I'm thinking I'm either in terrible shape or I've got a heart condition, and I know it's not a heart condition. So at that point, I would come home sometimes, as much as I could at night, and I would just run around the block a few times. I was probably never going more than a mile to 3 miles.
Yeah.
As time went on, it got better and better. And then I got out and I got in the Air Force, and you have your PT, but I found that a great place to run was around the runway out there at Scott Air Force Base.
Oh, yeah.
And it was about a 6-mile trip around. So I do this 6-mile trip around, and then one time, man, I'm going to go double that. I'm going to go around twice. And I ran around twice, and I can do this. And so that was kind of fun, and that's when the idea of maybe running marathons got into my brain, and then I moved here, and of course they have the St. George Marathon.
Yeah.
And they have trails around here.
Sure.
That you can go running on, so you don't have to be out on the street. You don't have to compete with traffic.
Yeah.
You only have to worry about skunks. I think that's about the only thing you have to worry about.
I've almost been sprayed once.
I've come close to that as well.
Yeah.
And that could definitely ruin your whole day because we're out in the dark.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just totally dark
Until
out
you're
there.
hit, you don't know.
And I don't always wear a light when I'm out in the dark.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm supposed to, but
yeah. So I did run that first marathon, and I didn't know what I was doing.
Sure.
It was interesting because I can remember that the day before I ran 8.5 miles. I didn't know anything.
You're like,
tapering.
taper?
What's that?
Red, I've got to run 26. I should be able to run 8 the day before.
I
right?
could run 8 miles the day before,
That's
and I
fun.
did. And I think my time, and I was just, how old was I? I was almost 50 years old, ran my first marathon, and I came in at 3 hours and 39 minutes.
Good, that's great.
And I just thought, all I can remember, because when you're at the St. George Marathon, you're going to get up to that part where you're passing through, was it Winchester up there?
Yeah.
And you go underneath the bridge, you get that last incline there, and you're up on top. And I can remember being up there, and I can see St. George and everything, and my body was screaming at me, going, "What are you doing?
PTA.
Stop!" And at that point, it was just mentally taking over and forcing myself to get through it. I did have a little hamstring cramp, I think. But I had dealt with other things through running and everything. I'd already had, I think, 3 surgeries on meniscus before I ran my first marathon.
So you beat up on them.
I'm not exactly sure why, but I'd had several on the meniscus. It was always involved with some sort of physical activity. I'm not exactly sure why I have that particular problem, but I did. I've had another surgery since then on my meniscus. But the knees don't bother me.
Blame it on mom and dad, right?
The knees just, except for that, knees don't ever bother me.
Good.
You can run on it. They've done MRIs on it and said, yeah, I mean, they looked inside because when they did, the very first meniscal when I had arthroscopic surgery was really new. It was about 1981.
Got it.
And they didn't do an MRI beforehand. Just kind of manipulated. Yeah, I think you got torn cartilage or something in there. And they brought me in and said, this is kind of a new thing. They brought me in the night before. So I had to stay overnight. Then they took me to the OR. Then they made me stay overnight. But they came in and got me walking after surgery later on. After that, all the ones were with a spinal, so I was awake with it. So on those, I could actually see
what they were doing.
And it was kind of fascinating and interesting to me because I was in the medical field.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty cool. But I would go back and get running, and injuries came along. Hamstrings, not uncommon. They usually heal up pretty good. They just take some time. You can even run on them. The Achilles tendons were always my biggest problem that I had. You get those and you just, I don't know any other way than say stop.
Yeah, that's kind of been if I had to choose an injury that has haunted me.
Yeah, is Achilles tendon.
Yeah.
Because you can't work through it. You can't run through it like a hamstring. You can't just take it. It just takes a longer time to heal. At one point I had a boot on for 12 weeks.
Oh yeah.
That was one of the marathons I did, one of the St. George marathons. I was in my best shape. I had been training really well. I remember it was a winter where we'd had a lot of rain, not as much as this year. And so I can remember a lot of times being out there and the rain coming down and wet, and just, I don't know, there's just the exhilaration that I'm accomplishing those goals and I'm going further and I'm getting faster. And the first thing I did that year is I had a plan to do the R2R2R, which is rim to rim to rim.
Okay, yeah, rim to rim to rim of the Grand Canyon.
Because I thought, well, when I first did a marathon, I thought, well, that'll be great, bucket list thing, get that off the list.
Sure.
You know, when I got done with the first one, I'm never doing this. Never. Within a few hours, I'm already planning the next one.
You got the medal on.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, you hated it when you get done, and you're like, I'm so glad that's over. I never want to do it again. And yeah, you're like,
you want to do a little better, right?
You're like, yes, exactly.
I think that's it.
You're thinking, oh, if I train a little harder and I can get this done.
Yeah.
And I can go even faster.
Right.
And so next thing I know, I'm all excited about doing another marathon. And my body was just screaming at me 8 hours earlier.
One
Stop.
Was at 50. So first
50 years old.
50
yes.
years old.
I was almost 50.
Okay. And now, how many races have you?
Well, I've done some
halves.
halves, and I've done about 9 marathons. Not a lot, because I've been off for a while with a lot of injuries here and there.
Yeah.
But that year, I got together my 2 sons and a friend of mine who's run like 100 marathons, another doctor up in Salt Lake City. His name's Tom Bowd. And I said, come on down with me. Let's do this, because look at the thousands of people who run marathons. Let's do something more unique.
Yeah.
I think that's why some people do the ultras.
Yeah.
They want to be in a different class by themselves. And I'm like, this will be awesome.
Yeah.
The shortest route over is to take the South Kaibab Trail. And so it'll be about 42 miles, 11,000 feet elevation change. Some guy ran this thing in just barely under 7 hours, which just blows my mind.
That's
42
crazy.
miles.
42 miles.
Yes. And I read some things, seen some things on YouTube, and it looked exciting. And I thought, I'm going to just set an easy goal. Let me try to get under 15 hours. And we were doing great. We were doing that. But my 2 boys who joined me, one who was in his late 20s, the other one was a teenager, ran cross country, were not in shape.
They weren't used to those distances.
They just weren't in shape. Yeah, they weren't in shape for it. The one only ran during cross country season, and the other one just liked to play basketball all the time.
No.
But they thought they could handle it. Whereas these 2 old guys in their mid 50s had to keep stopping for
Which
them.
I like to say, as we get older, we're built for longer distances. We don't go as fast.
Right.
Like we go from fast twitch muscle fibers to slow twitch.
Mhm.
We can't go as fast, but we can go longer.
Yes.
I feel.
Exactly.
So
I was
yeah.
never very fast, so I had to concentrate on the distance.
So how did that go then?
Well, I mean, it takes planning.
Yeah.
You got to train for it. You got to be marathon ready to do something like that. And part of the marathon ready is you don't wear a camelback on your marathons.
Sure.
On this one, there's not any aid stations along
Right.
the way.
There's nobody there handing you.
No, nobody's going to be there handing. You got to take it with you. You got to make sure you get nutrition. You got to stop at certain miles. You say, okay, every 2 miles, whatever, stop, drink, take some, trail mix,
Yep.
get going again, keep running. And I did that. And we got down to Phantom Ranch, and I'm filling up my Camelback, and I turned to my 2 boys and I said, "You better fill yours up. We got the uphill part now. We got to get moving here. We're wasting too much time. I've got this time.
Sure. Yeah.
We don't have time for
Let's
looking
go.
around. Let's go." And my son said, "I don't have to film mine. It's full."
Oh no.
And I'm like, "Maybe you guys ought to stay here, and my friend and I will pick you up on the way back. We'll take." No. We can go with you. We can handle this.
Yeah.
Within a mile, they were out of water.
Oh no.
We had to share ours. I had to encourage them on every switchback just to walk. It turned into a disaster. They made it out of there, but at that point, it was like they can't go back. So.
So you did the rim to rim.
Did the rim to rim, but never got to go back.
Have you attempted it?
I
since?
have had plans to, but again, I kind of run into these injuries along the way. So yeah, that's been my biggest problem, has been the injuries. But a couple years ago, what year was that? It was right before COVID, so I guess it was 2019. So I would have been qualified. I qualified that year to run Boston in 2020. And what happened is my first marathon that I ran, I had a son who had just come home from Italy off of his mission. And I convinced him to run it with me. And I beat him, but he'd done no training.
Okay.
And he fell in love with it.
Nice.
And so he is really into it. He's gone off, he's in the Air Force, he flies that F-35 jet. He's been over to Japan where he flew the F-16, but while he was over there, he ran 2 marathons.
Wow.
Yeah.
In Japan?
In Japan.
Nice.
Nagano, and I can't remember the other one. And so he's got this idea of doing all these great marathons. I got a brother-in-law, he's run 2 marathons because he was in the Air Force and he was over in Aviano, Italy. And I'm like, okay, I've run 9 marathons, but it really consists of only 2 things. It's St. George and Utah Valley.
Sure.
And his consists of Athens and Rome.
He's explored a little more.
Yeah, so I'm just like, yeah, we could get in a group and talk about, nobody wants to hear about mine. They don't want to hear about Rome and Athens.
His are runcations.
Or Japan.
We call it, right? Runcations.
Yeah, so he he started running with me, but he's got into it a lot more than me, and he sent me a whole workout plan. And that's where I really learned that there's 2 more P's to the to the PTA.
Okay.
It's pain, torture, and agony, but there's 2 P's that go on the front of that. And that's what I learned when I sat there and I had that. When you have a list and it's written down and it's there, and this day you're doing this and this day you're doing that, it's there to stare at you and say, remember, you're going to do this. And if you don't, remember how crappy you're going to feel that you didn't do this today.
Yeah.
And that you didn't get this. So it became the total focus of everything that I was doing, was to make sure that even on vacations, whatever, focus on that. And when we started out, he had me doing intervals once a week. Hated intervals. Absolutely hated intervals. But I would do them.
Yeah.
And I just guess, I'm just too slow. I just can't. And he keeps saying, you got to have the faith, Dad. You can do this. You got to believe. You got to believe in the religion. This is it. This will work. You will get faster. It will happen.
Trust the process.
Trust the process. Yes, it's going to take a while. None of this is short run.
Yeah.
This is going to take a long time. So I had run St. George, hadn't done all that well, wasn't well trained for it, had dealt with some injuries beforehand. But during this time frame, the only injury I really had was I had a hamstring that bothered me and a sciatic nerve for a while. But those were the only things that bothered me. And I can run with both of those. And so I just kept at it and kept hitting it. And we did a half marathon down in Mesa, Arizona, and I felt really good about that, because for me, I can't remember how old I was. I was over 60.
Yeah.
I was probably 62 or something like that. And I did really good. And he was holding me back. He said, no, let those people run out in front of us.
Yeah.
And it was just pacing.
But you're going, no, I can
You got to take the water. Me learning how to run with water was really difficult. Taking drinks and everything. Every mile, take a drink. No, I have to do every half a mile to do it. Otherwise, it gets in my stomach and I just don't feel that good. But you gotta hydrate along the way. You got to get the nutrition along the way. You got to squeeze the goo into there, or whatever you take.
Yeah.
And so it's strategic. You got to plan it out. You got to do that. If you're going to do that long run and you want to do well, you got to plan it out. And I finally realized when I did run, and I qualified it, I came in about 8 minutes under my qualifying time in order to go to Boston.
Nice.
And at that point, I realized what those other 2 P's were, and it was patience and persistence.
Patience, persistence.
And so now
pain, torture, and agony.
A lot of people are willing to go through pain, torture, and agony, but when you hit the injuries, when you're not seeing the success, you've got to still believe and still press on and keep doing it.
I love it. Patience and persistence.
And quite honestly, it's probably the most important part of what any tough, difficult thing you want to do in life. You got to be patient and persistent to keep doing it. There's going to be plenty of times along the way where there's going to be a desire to quit, and other people might even encourage you to quit.
Yeah. And
you just stay with it. So I qualified for Boston. That was exciting. Started trying to train for it and get ready for it, and it got delayed because of COVID.
Yeah.
And then they eventually ended up canceling it altogether. And right before they did, I ruptured my Achilles tendon.
Yeah.
And being as I was, which is not always a good thing, that because again, man, I'm losing all this. I got to get back there. How long am I going to be off? How soon can I go back to work?
Yeah.
You can go back to work with crutches, knee scooter, whatever, in 2 weeks. And so I went back where I was on call a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It would have been 2 weeks, and I had somebody an umbilical cord dropped out, and they called me, and I rushed in. And as I got out of my car and started trying to go with one crutch and the boot on and get up there, I felt something tear.
Oh.
And I can remember being in there doing this C-section and feeling the blood trickle down the back of I could feel it wet and moist and the blood coming out of and I'm worried at this point that I've disrupted the tendon.
Yeah.
Probably a little scared of my orthopedics doctor too, what he was
Thought
going
you
to
were
think.
in trouble.
Yeah. So I got afterwards, I looked at it, and there were some steri strips across it. I didn't want to take them off, but I could tell it was probably open, but it looked like it was intact. And I just thought, okay, it'll heal in. It'll heal in by secondary. You know, we don't have to stitch this. It'll heal in. Well, 4 weeks later, it wasn't looking very good. And I had to go back and see him. And his PA came in and said, how's it going? You have any problems? I go, well, I kind of have a wound disruption here. Okay. And Dr. O'Brien comes in, and he takes his phone out of his pocket, and he looks at it, and he goes, you say you have an open wound? Yeah, I do. You know, I'm looking at my phone here, and I don't see any text messages from you. I don't have any missed calls here from you. Did you try to get in contact? Did you try to call me about this?
You were
and
in
let
trouble.
me know? I was in trouble.
Yeah.
We tried doing wound clinic, and it was doing good, and then it got infected, and so I had to go back and debride the whole wound, and then he gave me the good news, and he says, oh, by the way, we didn't have to put a wound vac on, and we were able to save 15% of your tendon. And at that point, I'm like, 15%?
Yeah.
I could go upstairs and this thing could blow. What's going to happen? I mean, I don't know. It's not my specialty. And I'm just feeling kind of depressed, and I think he just kind of like, yeah, I can see what he's going through. I'm just going to play him along, encourage him. It's going to be all right. He knew the end from the beginning that more than I did.
Yeah.
And so by the time I finally got off crutches, I'd been on crutches for 21 weeks.
Oh.
And I thought,
patience and persistence.
yeah, I thought everything would just bounce back. And after a couple of months, I started running little short bits, run, walk, more and more, until last summer I was running through the whole summer. Oh, by the way, I did go to Boston and watched it with crutches.
Oh, man. But you made it.
I made it. My biggest challenge there was getting on and off subways with crutches.
Oh, and you qualified. It sounds like multiple times.
One time.
One time.
No, that
but
was
you
the
did
thing.
The first one?
No, all those times that I ran, I was always coming up short.
Just a little short. So
I was always coming up just a little bit short because I wasn't following a good dedicated plan and believing in it.
Yeah.
And so that's why I just struggled. I mean, it took me a long time. I mean, we're talking over 10 years to finally get there and to finally qualify. And that was the most satisfying thing. Boston was just the idea to say, okay, I ran it.
Yeah.
But getting there and to say that I actually qualified to run it, that was really important. And I did that at the Utah Valley Marathon, is where I qualified for Boston. And that was just a great moment. That was just so exhilarating to have done that. I can remember, crossing that finish line and just screaming because I was so happy. Yeah. Because I'd been through so much to get there, and it worked. And I just lay it all up to patience, persistence, and pain, torture, and agony.
I love that message. I think that message in and of itself is helpful for anyone watching or listening. And
well, a lot of life is like that, I guess. I mean,
I think it is life.
Going through medical school and everything, I guess, was pain, torture, and agony. But I always tell people, if you have a burning desire in your heart to do something like that, you can do it.
Yeah.
I remember when I told my mom, I said, you know what, I'm going to try to get into medical school. And she says, oh, don't do that, Brady. I will pay your way through law school. Go be a lawyer.
She didn't want you to be a doctor.
3 years as a lawyer, 3 years to get out and be a lawyer.
She just knew.
Gosh, what did I spend? 9 years plus the 3 years of getting pre-med done and everything and applying. So it was like a 12-year process versus what could have been a 3-year process. But I realized that doing something that I wasn't interested in would have been pain. It would have been it would have been hard.
That would have been the what ifs. The pain of what if is...
I think it was easier for me to do that 12 years, to do something different that was going to take a long time and that was really hard. If you're going to do something hard, you got to have a burning desire in your heart to do it. Otherwise, it's very difficult to do it. You got to love it.
Yeah.
And I think I love running, and I love the feeling that it gives me. I can remember, sometimes being out there and you're 6 miles into a run that day and maybe you're going 12 or whatever and you're thinking, man, I can just go forever.
Yeah.
You can't. You can't. Eventually your brain starts to catch up with you. I mean, your pain, your body.
Yeah.
I saw a meme one time, or a little thing that said, my mind thinks I'm 25. My body thinks my mind is an idiot.
Yes. That's right. You have to push through it.
You do, but it's easier to do if you have a really strong desire to do it. And so again, patience, persistence, the plan, you got to believe it will work. You have to stay with it, and you have to do it. I've not found any shortcuts to anything.
Yeah.
Not to anything worthwhile. My dad used to tell me, if it was easy, everybody'd be doing it.
Yeah, I think that's very true.
And so it's the difficult things that you do that make it all worthwhile. But you just don't pick something difficult because it's difficult. You pick it because you want to do that.
Yeah, I love it. I really love it. Okay, we're going to shift a little bit here. If you need to, so in the past we've kept the podcast about at this length right here. So sorry, if you want to, you can turn it off, right? I want to touch really quick on some of his family history really quick. So a lot of what we talked about is longevity. I want you to give us you don't have to go too long, but brief-ish. Tell me a little bit about your family, and I want to know your opinion on genes. Is it genes or is it choices and decisions? Like when it comes to your health, what are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that is it's both, but the only thing you can control is what you do with your health.
So you've got the genes or genes?
Genes are genes. I've seen some families that just cancer everywhere. There are people who have genetics to where they're more predisposed to have a heart attack later on in life, even when they're in good health and condition. But you can control you can have that management over something. And I think in looking at even some patients of mine, it's kind of interesting. You get some that are very kind of independent, and you have to kind of negotiate with them as to, well, I'd kind of like you to do this. No, I don't really want to do that. Well, will you do this? And, okay, I'll do that. and you can notice that. Particularly, I notice it when they have to completely submit themselves to like a C-section.
Yeah.
They can't have any control there.
Yeah.
They're not allowed to have any control. They have to submit. They have to get everything, and you can see it, the loss of control in their face and in their eyes of how hard that is for them to deal with.
Nerve-wracking.
Right. So you can do when you need to be able to have control over your life on what your health is going to be like, and you can make a big difference. When I look at my family, I always find it interesting. We're in 2023.
Yeah.
We're basically in the 21st century. My grandparents were born 2 centuries ago.
That's insane.
Yeah. My grandfather was born in 1870.
1870.
Yes.
His grandpa.
My grandfather.
Grandfather, 1870.
1870. My grandmother was born in 1889, one of them. I can't remember my other grandfather. He was born before 1900, but his wife was born in 1900.
1900.
Yeah. My mother passed away about a year and a half ago at the age of 102.
102.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Her brother passed away at 94.
Yeah.
And she had another brother, but he had a brain tumor, so he died in his late 60s, unfortunately. But there was definitely, grandmother passed away in her late 80s. I think her father had passed away he was in his 80s, late 80s. He had a stroke. But they lived a different lifestyle, and I got a little bit of a picture of that when I found my mother's scrapbook and noticed how much she was involved in skiing, band, and going out in the mountains, in the Wasatch Mountains up there, and everything that they were involved with and what their lifestyle was like. And they had a good life.
So they may say it's genes, but
I think they lived, yes, but they lived a good lifestyle. A good healthy lifestyle. When I was a kid, of course, you know, we had one hamburger joint, I think, in town where my dad was assigned at that time. He was in the Air Force. I was born in Landstuhl, Germany. And then we moved to Muncie, Indiana, where he was ROTC instructor, and I was going to school there. But in that time frame, when you're young like that, you had breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah.
Mom fixed all of that. My mom was really big on a variety as far as the food was concerned. She knew how to cook a lot of different things, but there was always some sort of vegetable. There was always a salad. There was always a meat of one kind or another. Dessert was Jell-O.
Yeah.
And you didn't get your Jell-O unless you cleaned up your plate.
There you go.
And I would always eat the vegetables first, because the last thing I wanted in my mouth was something that I disliked. So I would save the best thing on the plate till last.
Till last. You're smart. That's good.
Yeah. I knew I had to eat it or I wasn't going to get the Jell-O.
So your mom, like, without even thinking, just did really healthy things.
Absolutely, yes.
She was like instinctively.
Probably got it from her own parents and just the lifestyle they lived. And back in that day and age when they grew up, we didn't have imports from South America and Mexico and everywhere bringing in fresh fruits and vegetables year round.
Yeah.
We are really blessed to be able to have the variety and of foods year round that we deal with.
Yeah.
So we really don't have an excuse. We have so many time-saving devices in our lives. We really don't have a good excuse for not taking time out of our lives to live a better life. And it's multifaceted. So if somebody will come in, man, I feel really off. I feel this, that, and the other. It must be my hormones. And it's almost never the hormones. Never the hormones. I said it's not that simple. It's not that easy. Every day our body is bombarded with viruses and bacteria, and our immune system has to respond, and it's reacting to it. We don't always have overt symptoms from that, but we may feel a little down that day. I just watched an extensive course on sleep and sleep study, and sleep is tremendously important. But if I was to do the same thing on diet, I could tell you that diet's just important. If you go to the exercise, it's just important. We've learned something else about exercise too. It can't be all cardio.
Yeah.
Weightlifting is important. That you should be doing weights and building strength. And even runners know that. You're always talking about building the core and the muscles here so that you can be a more effective runner. Getting done with a run and going in and doing squats.
Yeah.
That's painful. You get done with the run and you like to think you're done, and then you got to put these heavy weights on your shoulders and start doing squats, and your legs are already fatigued. There's just so many things that go into a healthy lifestyle.
Yeah.
And
I was going to ask you, I was going to say if you could pick one, but it sounds like your answer is no, there's not one.
There isn't just one.
There's like the full body, you've got to...
Right. How can you be on top of the world yesterday and today you're not?
Yeah.
Was it the amount of sleep you got last night? Was it the quality of sleep that you got? Was it what you ate yesterday or the day before or the day before? Or how much sleep you got the day before and the day before and the day before that? Is it what particular environmental pathogens invaded your body in the meantime that your immune system is fighting against and taking care of? Not to where you have fevers, not to where you feel sick, but maybe you just feel a little bit down.
Just not well.
Just not well. Just not well.
Yeah.
Oh, and let's not forget also, the brain is one of those things, when you run a marathon. I wish I could put it with all my clothing and just ship it to the finish line so I don't have to carry that 3 pounds with me.
Yeah.
Carrying an extra 3 pounds, 26 miles, no, I'd love to be able to get rid of that thing. And then it wouldn't be screaming at me and telling me, what are you doing? Well, how many times have you done this? And you keep saying, I'm never going to do it again. This is the last one. I wish I could just ship it to the end and then pick it up and put it back in the head. But the mental health is really crucial and important. But then we know that exercise improves mental health.
Yeah.
So
your health is your habits.
Yeah. I don't want to use that word, but I'll use that word, holistic.
Yeah.
It's not one of my favorite words. I think it gets bantered around a lot without a lot of great understanding of what is really holistic.
Sure.
But it's everything.
But holistic
Is
what you're
everything.
talking. It's like just encompassing
Yes.
lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have you're not going to feel so great the next day if you've had a dispute with somebody the night before.
True.
Okay, that's all mental.
Yeah.
You probably didn't sleep so well as a result of that.
Okay.
So all of those things play in together to improve your quality of life.
I love it.
And as far as longevity is concerned, I'll tell people if you take good care of your health in your 20s, your 30s, you'll be in a habit. And when you get your 40s and 50s, you can have a great life. We were used to seeing in the medical scenery, we get this filtered group of people. And when I worked a year of internal medicine, I was at the VA, I saw this filtered group of people, and it was just kind of sad. They were the old World War II vets. They were very, very gracious and people, but they grew up on cigarettes and things that weren't healthy for their lifestyle. And you begin to think that that's how all people live when they get older. And the answer is no, there's a lot of older people out there having a great time.
Yeah.
I watched Jack LaLanne when I was a little boy on the black and white TV, and Jack LaLanne lived to, I think, 94, 96.
Yeah, he was older.
And they asked him, do you think you're ever going to die? His response was, I can't. It'll ruin my reputation.
I love it. I love that you
I know.
told me that.
He did. He did pass away. He got pneumonia and was gone in a couple of days because our body's ability to repair itself and defend itself, regardless of what we do, is going to go downhill over time.
Yeah.
But we can defend and repair a lot better if we live that kind of lifestyle that allows that to happen. And it's got to be all of it.
I love it.
It's got to be all the above. It can't just be just weightlifting, but if that's all you can do, great. Lift weights.
Sure.
It can't be just running, but if that's all you can do, that's all you can really fit in, do it. But I find it just didn't take that much. Before I go running every morning, I'll spend 30 minutes, maybe 15 of it stretching, but I'll spend maybe 15 minutes of it is push-ups, crunches,
Yeah.
weights.
Love it. Doc,
Yes.
this has been amazing. I really enjoyed the time that I've been able to spend here. So I don't know. I'd say, is there any last parting thoughts? But I feel like full of. I can't wait to go back. I go back and I like listening to these, and I'm gonna go back and listen to this and just absorb it. And I hope for our audience, for patients or whoever across the country, across the world gets to hear this. These are awesome. So thank you so much. Yeah. So I think that's it for today.
All right.
That was
Appreciate
awesome. Okay. This is Dr. Traveler and Dr. Benham, and we're signing out. Okay. Thanks, guys. See ya. All right. Thanks for listening today. Hey, if you could please go on, subscribe, make a comment, go on to all the other social media. Go on to Facebook, Instagram, go on to TikTok, search for Healthology Experts. It really helps us to grow and push this message. And if you gain value from this, then go on and please participate. We try to get to all of the questions or anything that you have, any responses or comments. So go, subscribe, do all the stuff that you know helps us. All right, guys. See ya.